Hello and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast with me, your host, Freddie Hall, joined once again by Andrew and a famous face from the fantasy show, Byron. Lots of NFL talk to talk about. It has got bloody cold here in the UK, so it is now officially winter season, and we've got Thanksgiving coming up this week, which we'll be talking about, which we definitely have a tradition of doing a lot for. So we'll talk about that later on. However, Viva la Mexico! NFL hit Mexico this weekend. It was a late game last night. The San Francisco 49ers traveling down to Mexico City against the Arizona Cardinals. I say that very confidently. It was in Mexico City, right? I'm not I've not made that up, I'm pretty sure. A dominant display from the San Francisco 49ers, beating the Cards 38-10. 49ers, a very heavily supported team in Mexico. Obviously, a lot of Hispanic people in the California region, I suppose in the Arizona region as well, because Arizona have been to Mexico a few times now. A big weekend of NFL football. Like me and Adam predicted, the 6 o'clock games, a little bit lackluster in some parts, but some excited moments in there. It was more of a later game, so I had a bit more to show for it. But really, we've got to start off with the Mexico game, Andrew. The 49ers putting on a dominant performance in the rain. Just watch the highlights now. 49ers looking very impressive. I made a bold statement a couple of weeks ago on another pod that they could be an NFC Championship caliber team.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just the inclusion of Christian McCaffrey into that team's definitely just makes them look so much better. I mean, he's not involved massively like as a game changer for them, but just the addition of him just makes them look that complete team. I think everyone, the pieces seems to be coming together for them, and they've seemed to have hit their streak at the right time. I mean, Thanksgiving is always a good time of the year to be looking your best, and I think they can push on. I mean, they've still got a tough task because they didn't have a great start to the season, but they definitely look good enough and strong enough to be the contenders to be the top team in the NFC.
It truly was, Byron, backup against backup, because we all forget that Jimmy Garoppolo is the backup quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. Sorry, no Kyler Murray in this game, so we had a Colt McCoy, and then later on Trace McSorley came in. I know it wasn't against the starting quarterback, but the 49ers, they look quite convincing no matter who they put at that quarterback position, right? I mean, the playmaking was just sensational at times.
Yeah, it's one of them. With the addition of McCaffrey, it's just one more thing for defensive coordinators to lose sleep over. How do you comfortably take him out of the game whilst leaving people like Deebo Samuel, not leaving people like Deebo Samuel to sort of carve up your secondary. It's one of them. It was probably one of the best trades we've seen. They may have given up quite a lot, but it's one of those. How do you stop that offense when you know you're going to have nightmares with the pace that they have on that offense? It's something that no one seems to have figured out how to do yet.
Andrew, the Cardinal team, we've lauded a lot on this podcast before, and then had been very bitterly disappointed in, and having watched the highlights. And I mean, I'm not taking away from the 49ers offense. There are some cracking players on that team. McCaffrey, Deebo, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk getting a 2 touchdowns as well. But the Cardinals defense at times, I mean, they just let that one significant play with Kittle is the one that stands out a lot. And obviously the Deebo sort of swing pass as well, but he does that to so many teams. This Cardinal defense at times just didn't look like they were there to play.
Yeah, I mean, we said this last year, didn't we? We said they brought in a lot of older players. They've got a lot of veterans. We said they look strong at the start of seasons, but they tail off later on. And I think in the off season, we had a lot of the Cardinals defenders coming out and being unhappy with how the team was progressing and wanting out. And that's just now reiterating it again that it's on that franchise is on the decline a little bit. It's not pushing forward like the 49ers have seen what they've got and gone, let's go all in. I think the Cardinals missed the window with some of the bigger names that they had in the past, and they're always going to be one of those teams that's going to hover around a rebuild because it's not full rebuild because they've got some absolutely fantastic pieces. It's just now filling the holes for them because it's not going to work for them the way they're going with the veterans, and later on down the year they don't look great. So they need to see what the contingency plan is to last 17 games.
And Andrew, I only go back to you because you are someone who has not exactly spoke highly of Kyler Murray at times. Hindsight, Kyler plays, maybe a few more points on the board, but let's play the fantasy imaginary world. If Kyler played and this result was still the same, do you think there's some whispers in Arizona of we need to not maybe move off Kyler, but something needs to change here? Because even with Kyler playing, they've not looked convincing at times. They have had injuries, I will admit, with Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown going on to IR. They also cut Benjamin, which was like all of us said, why did they cut Benjamin? He looked pretty good there. But is there a bit of panic in Arizona now about what the solution is to fix the Cardinal problem?
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be question marks hovering over the head coach as well as the quarterback. I mean, he hasn't got it done. Kingsbury hasn't got it done at all in any of his seasons, and his record since after they went, did they start 7-0 last year? Was it? It was
7 or 8. I can't remember.
And then if you look at it from that to now, his record's not good. So he's not managed to progress this team or move it forward. So there's got to be question marks on his head as well, because although I've not spoke highly of Kyler Murray, although I've not said I think he's overhyped. The short of it is he's still a good quarterback. He's not a bad quarterback. He's very talented, and they've got to play to his strengths. Any team needs to play to the strengths of their players, and he's got a good basis. So my issue would be, if you got rid of him, what would improve that position? Who could you bring in that would be instantly better? And I struggle with that concept slightly, because he is talented. It's just building a playbook around his strengths. So I would say, if you did get rid of him, what's the solution? What's better? Who would make an instant impact to improve on top of what he's already doing? And I would struggle at saying who would that be and how much would that cost. So I think you stick with Kyler and try and get the best out of him still, because he has the talent. You just need to home in on it and play to his strengths. Can't
teach height though, can you?
No. You can adapt.
I don't think signing a full offensive line full of 5'8" linemen is going to be the best option for them.
It would look like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs back there, wouldn't he? 49ers now, I did mention it before. I said they could be an NFC Championship caliber team. They're top of their division, unbeaten in their division as well, 4-0, 6-4. Okay, Seahawks are 6-4 as well. It wasn't the Seahawks we thought they'd be competing against in this division. It was the Rams everyone thought. I mean, the Cards are only 4-7. The Rams are 3-7. The 49ers, Seattle are going to battle them, but can you see this being a division that is fought to the last day of the season between the 49ers and Seahawks, unless there is a late resurgence from the Rams and the Cards?
Was that to me or to
that was to Byron, but there seemed to be a camera mishap just for one moment.
Sorry, yes, there was. Please repeat the end of that question, Fred.
So do you think that the 49ers and Seahawks will be competing till the end of the season for these two positions, pending that the Cardinals and Rams don't make a sort of a last gasp for it?
Yes and no. The 49ers definitely look like more of a complete team, only because I personally have more trust in Trey Lance and, Jimmy G than I do Geno Smith. I think Geno Smith has looked good, but then you've seen at the same time how he's looked. He's shown why he has been a backup, even if it's just for a quarter and a half or a half in individual games. I do think it's one of those. I think the bubble will burst for Seattle, and I don't see that with the 49ers. I think they are a complete team. I think they'll take that division quite comfortably from here on out.
And then when it comes to the playoffs, it's anyone's game, I suppose. One thing we don't probably hear about, pending that it is it's only the next day, and also as well the fact that it's across the other side of the world for us. If we're going to go to Mexico, we might as well go to America, really, if you're going to watch American football anyway. with Munich just happening last weekend, and we heard so much about how incredible that was, Andrew, and how the atmosphere was amazing. A lot of people say better atmosphere than London. I mean, we all said maybe we'd sack off the London games to give Munich a go because it'd be a fun trip. Not that we're probably going to sack off London games to get to Mexico. I think that might be just a little bit out of our reach, but we've seen the expansion this year. NFL London being very successful. NFL Munich debuted there, very successful as well. Mexico has been for a few years the place outside of the US for American football to begin with, before London sort of has got bigger. But we don't hear enough about it, I suppose, because how many of us do go to Mexico? How many? There's not really any NFL UK people that do go there for that game. But moving forward for NFL in general and their expansion, is Mexico going to be a key part of that? Do you think going forward? There's always talk here of more games in London, more games in Munich, and we all really forget about Mexico because really we don't know anyone who's been there to experience it. But do you think they're going to be a key piece moving forward?
Yeah, I think any of the surrounding countries of the United States is always going to be a key piece to growing it. I think Canada would be a good one. Mexico, definitely. I think when you listen to Kyle Shanahan about his experience there, about it's one of the greatest experiences that he's ever had, that's definitely got an impact. And the progression in that country to bring players through as well has got to be given the chance and the opportunity as well, with it being so close. So I think the expansion into as many countries as possible is fantastic for the sport, and is only going to encourage an influx of international players to want to take it up and progress. And I think that's fantastic for growth in general. So who wouldn't want that to be a bigger part of the American football and the NFL growing?
And do you think, Byron, we always talk about it sort of spreading around Europe and even looking at new places for the NFL to go more internationally. Do you think South America is an option in terms of not just Mexico, maybe even Brazil? Or do you, that's just a conversation I've never heard, but do you think that is an option that the NFL may look into?
Yeah, I mean, it would be smart to, obviously, with Mexico, it's right on the border. It's a lot easier. I don't know whether personally Mexico will have more than one game a year, just because if you are an NFL fan and you live in Mexico, it's what, 2-hour flight, depending on where you are. I feel like further afield in South America, and even into Asia, for an expansion is probably the best way to go if you're looking at adding more international games, just because it's so much more difficult for people in those parts of the world to get to games. Like us, it's 7 hours minimum to get over to the States to watch a game. So I think they'd be probably better for countries, bigger countries like Brazil and Argentina, and places like that to have those games, as opposed to more in Mexico, to be honest.
And if I don't know if our reach is this far, but if there's anyone in Mexico who went to the Mexican game, who went to the 49ers Cardinals game last night, shout us in the comments when this video comes out on any of our platforms. We'd love to hear what the experience is like, what the game day is like. I know it was in the rain, so it was a bit of a not that fun being outside, but was it quite humid? George Kittle seemed to have a wonderful time in his Lucha Libre mask, which Kittle has a bundle of fun wherever he goes. I'm sure he's going to have even more fun when he gets a couple of touchdowns as well. So let's talk about the games. I mean, Sunday, me and Adam said there was going to be a couple of dud games. I mean, there was some excitement. A very close game between the Eagles and Colts. Eagles just winning that only marginally. The Falcons and Bears game going down to the wire. The Ravens and Panthers game was dud for a long stretch. 3-3 for a long part, but the Ravens win that 13-3. The Jets Patriots 3-3 until the last play of the game and a punt return. They won 10-3. That was a wild ending to that story. And of course, the Lions beating the Giants as well, Andrew, which obviously you probably don't want to ponder on that too much. 31-18, which is a big upset in them early games. Going to the later games, the Raiders beating the Broncos, with the Broncos just looking so sorry for themselves at the minute, and the Cowboys dominating the Vikings, giving the Vikings beating the Bills the other weekend, and we thought we could really go to Dallas, and that Dallas could come to them and give them a competitive game, and it just did not happen. Only 3 points in the Chiefs-Chargers game. Lots of quarterback play, Andrew. I know you've got some quarterbacks you'd like to talk about from this weekend. I take it's going to be who we're impressed with and who we were not so impressed with, maybe.
Well, one of them is someone I'm not really impressed with, and I just wanted to get the take on a couple of guys. Now we're at sort of that period where it's getting time to, if you're not going to qualify for the playoffs, should you look to next year? I think this is now when you start looking to what's the contingency plan for next year. And those guys for me were what you're doing in the New York Jets, because yet again, we didn't see a great performance from Zach Wilson. And for me, we're not really seeing any accountability from him for the fact that that team isn't good when he's in it. Because when Joe Flacco was in, we've said it loads on here, when Joe Flacco was in there, the wide receivers looked better. I know they've lost Breece Hall, but they started off the season with Michael Carter and they eased Breece Hall into it. So you can't blame it on that. The defense is playing well, and it's keeping them in games. So when is the time to, even Robert Saleh, you can see that he's made progression with this team. This team, he's working well with individuals, and this team looks like it's moving forward. So for me, I was yet again saying Zach Wilson for me. He only completed 9 passes. So is now the time to start looking at whether you want to replace him, whether you want to look to the draft again, whether you want to bring a different quarterback in now, because they're still in the running to qualify for the playoffs. So now for me is the time to look at this franchise and say, if we realistically want to make a push for the playoffs this year, do we go in on him? Because if you lost the season and there was nothing to play for, you could go, let's give him the rest of the year. But what's your guys' take on, are you in on Zach Wilson? Do you think he's the problem at the Jets? And would you look at a contingency plan for the future to move off of it?
I'll let you start, Byron, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit difficult because they have played well in, not him personally, as such, but I feel like they're not in a sort of win now mode yet. Yes, he hasn't been playing well. You may be starting to put the feelers out for another quarterback. I'm not sure who they'd pick up who's already in the league, if I'm totally honest, because from what we've seen this season, the sort of veterans of this league aren't performing anywhere near as well as they have done previously. And I don't watch too much college football, so whoever's coming up in the next year and the year after, I'm not too sure. But I wouldn't say they're in win now mode at all. You look at the last 2 seasons. They have 2. Did they have 2 top 10 picks this year? Is that right? Yeah. Exactly. You look at that. They are still rebuilding. I personally would give them to the end of the year because, like I say, they still have a lot of young players. Next year, they will have players still on their rookie contracts. They don't have to make big cuts. They haven't got any high-profile names who they need to cut players to be able to fit their contracts in. That said, I'm not impressed with Zach Wilson. That's not me endorsing him staying at all. But yeah, I don't think they're in win now mode. I think they should stick until the end of the year with him. See where it takes them.
I agree with Byron. I think they should stick with him because if you stick spill this from the top and break it down a little bit. You stick with him and you get to the playoffs with him, you could go, we're a quarterback away because our defense is really good. Our offensive weapons are very good as well. Garrett Wilson's really performed. I like Elijah Moore. Denzel Mims has shown flashes this year, finally. Tyler Conklin, I think, is a decent tight end. Breece Hall, obviously, annoying that he's injured this year, but he's going to come back next year, and he's a heck of running back. He showed real great ball skills and play before he got injured. You've got in James Robinson. Sorry, no, you didn't get in Joe. Yeah, got in James Robinson, and you've got Michael Carter. You've got then 3 running backs. You could trade one of them running backs is going to get traded away next year. I think, or they're going to get cut at some point. I think they're going to get traded personally because you don't need all 3 of that talent on there. You're at the minute, season end today, you're drafting at 18. Andrew is obviously the college quarterback guy. I have a base knowledge, and I know that this college class for quarterbacks is very good. Is 18, if it ended today, good enough to get yourself someone better than Zach Wilson? Maybe in this draft, because it is meant to be loaded with quarterbacks. But from what we've seen in the past, the Jets are not afraid to move. They're not afraid to move up. This is the first year that they haven't got the Seattle pick to be able, because the Seattle pick, if they had it, would be, I mean, they haven't, well, Seattle get their pick to, well, where is Seattle's pick? Where's Seattle's pick? Seattle are currently at 21. So even if they had their pick this year, it'd be 21 and 18. You could package that and move up. But the Jets are not afraid to move up if they need to and to play with that. And I think justifiably so, because you can get to the end of the season and go, we got to the playoffs, or we just missed out on the playoffs because of bad quarterback play. Because I think their defense is mustard. I really like this defense. And I think Salah's really shown it. And the picks have been great. Sauce Gardner's proven great. Their D-line's been good. It's never been a problem. It's been everything else. And they've now picked it up and they've built it, like Byron said, with guys on rookie contracts. You could also go to the offseason and do a big signing. That definitely could be a case as well. You could do what Denver did and give away some picks for a veteran quarterback. It's not particularly worked, we've seen this year. So that could maybe put them off. But if I'm looking at, I mean, the problem is how far can you get before there's teams that don't need a quarterback and that don't want to move. The top 10 at the minute is Houston, need a quarterback arguably. However, I like Davis Mills. Carolina, need a quarterback. Chicago, don't need a quarterback. You could definitely easily look at Chicago maybe. Raiders, let's see what they're doing with it. However, there's a pass rusher who's really good who could go in that top 5. Seattle, need a quarterback. Geno Smith is not the answer. The Lions need a quarterback. Texans, again, pick at 7. So one of them picks, they could easily move down. Pittsburgh, not in the market for a quarterback, I don't think, but definitely need the best O-lineman in this draft. Jacksonville, not in the quarterback market, and maybe not in a top 10 player market either. I don't think their team is that bad at all. And if you can move, they could move down. Do the Jets at 9 then get a quarterback better than Zach Wilson? I think so. Maybe in this draft, I think so. And then at 10 is the Eagles. Again, don't need a quarterback. The Eagles and Jacksonville, the Eagles maybe more so because we know what Philly are like in their movement within drafts. If you get to the offseason and you shop that pick and no one's taking bites, I think you then look at what you have on free agency and maybe trading for a quarterback. But so I think you try and get that traded before draft night. I think because it's they need to do it. They are so obviously a quarterback away. Their O-line's decent when healthy. It's never healthy, unfortunately, but there's got to be one year it's going to be healthy. Their offensive weapons are good. Their running backs are stacked. Their defense are playing at a really, really high level and will only strengthen because they have the money. So they'll lose players this year and they'll be able, in off season, and they'll do some trades or make some cuts. They'll have the money again. I don't know what their salary cap is, but you can imagine it's high considering they're not paying anyone a big salary. Other than I believe Mekhi Becton, I think they end up giving a big contract or maybe his contract's up this year. I think the Jets are in a really, really interesting position about what they do with their team moving forward, but their future is definitely not Zach Wilson.
So if it's not, why leave him in there?
Because I think that there is no at this point. At this point, if you lose a load of games, your draft stock goes up and you've shown that you're a decent team. If you keep them in there and you win more games, you prove you're only a quarterback away. And like Byron said, I think on the market, there's nothing. What is there? Cam Newton.
I mean, if I was being sensible and I was looking at it, this would facilitate well for 2 teams. I'd go for Derek Carr.
That's a very interesting play.
Because I think Raiders need to move off of Derek Carr and hit reset mode completely. And I think he's going to be the fall guy for that team. Someone's got to fall on the sword, and I think they might want Derek Carr to fall on the sword. Because
hasn't Mike Davis also come out and said that he's completely behind Josh McDaniels? Not that that means anything.
Yes, he has. He said he's completely on McDaniels, and if you're in on him and you want to give him a year and you want to let him show what he can do with his team, then you've got to give him a chance to play with his team. And maybe you just get rid of Derek Carr. Maybe you bring in one of the big names from college. They're going to have to pick high enough, aren't they? So
do Vegas do that now? Oh well,
they need to do it before the Super Bowl. So
you can't trade anyone now. The trade deadline's done, isn't it? So then it'll be the off season. So then you can do that.
Yeah.
No, wait. Does the trade open?
You can like line it up.
Yeah,
you can't go through.
You could literally the day one of the not deadline, but the reopening of the trade window. You could go Derek Carr there. The problem is Vegas really, in the position they're in now, really could have done with trading him away earlier and probably got maybe the number 1 pick. Yeah. But at 4, they're currently at 4, so they could get a quarterback at 4. That is not a move I even thought about, to be honest with you. You make a really interesting point. It's just, do the Jets want to take on his contract, or do they want to get younger, or do they want to win now? I think they're setting themselves up for the future, and a new quarterback could be just that.
Yeah, but if they, let's say they, decide they want to draft him round 1 and go for another quarterback at 18 or whatever they are. Let's say the likes of, I don't know who's going to be there. Maybe Hendon Hooker might be there at that period because people aren't hot on him being an NFL quarterback. I love Hooker. I think he's fantastic. But you could have a similar scenario again where because you're not drafting one of the top 2 big guys, it could be a bit of a reach, and you could be in the same situation that the Jets are in every year, where they get the quarterback wrong and haven't got it right since like 2008. So,
and then when you look at recent drafts and you go, Ravens taking Lamar Jackson at 32, you go like, well, maybe we don't need to move, because like you said, Hendon Hooker, people are saying not isn't an NFL ready quarterback. He's had an ACL tear that puts people off. They could sit at 18 and get Hendon Hooker, and Hendon Hooker might be incredible for them. Yeah. But getting Derek Carr, you've got a great defense. Carr's not had that in Vegas or in Oakland when they were in Oakland, and has had the best weapons, but has had amazing weapons around him at times. Granted, you are putting an NFL ready quarterback, aren't you? And you're making that push. But when you've got Josh Allen in your division, Mac Jones, however you feel about him in the division, Tua in the division, do you go, well, we go younger for the extended period because we're coming up against these quarterbacks for the extended period? Or do you go, we could pip Patriots here because Mac Jones isn't incredible? Josh Allen is only getting older, and there has been cracks this year. I mean, Byron, you can maybe testify to that. I'll probably bounce it on to you with that. And then Miami, they're coming up with a hot spell, but they've not got youth on their side in all their positions.
You've seen the comment that's just come in?
I've not, no.
Imagine Jets need to get Jimmy G.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've only just realised the comments were coming up. So Jags could easily trade down. This from Armchair Commentary, whoever you out there. Nice to thank you for watching. Better value on draft day, in my opinion. Look at the AJ Brown deal last year. Very interesting. My colleague is dialed in with the Jets beat writers, and word is Mike White is likely to come in. McDaniels isn't going anywhere because the Rays are cash broke. They can't afford to cut him / pay him out. Carr statistically hasn't been the problem though, and the Jets needed to get Jimmy G last offseason when they had the chance. I could get behind that Jimmy G comment.
Yeah, well, if he's going to the Super Bowl this year, that's not a thing.
Well, yeah. But it's not Jimmy G was going to the Super Bowl with this team, was it? It was going to be it's their offense. Jimmy G is not making that offense tick, so to speak. What do Byron, as a Byron fan, as a Buffalo fan with the Jets in division, what do you think?
I think Jimmy G would be okay for them, and that is because he is, arguably one of the best at throwing the check down. Before Breece Hall got injured, that's who you want. Bubble screens, wide receiver screens. You've got the players who are quick enough to do it. It works.
I've always said he's a leader, isn't he? He's a leader and can lead a team. That's worth its weight in gold. Zach Wilson is arrogant and sporadic and looks for the glory all the time. It doesn't work for me. Hey, but apparently Mike White is likely to come in. You know.
It's okay. I'm just currently texting one of our friends. We have a new friend in our group who has got into the NFL. He came to the NFL UK game. He's now trying to rob my Game Pass off me. He's become a San Francisco 49ers fan. He bought an Alex Smith 49ers vintage jersey over the weekend. Shout out to Dan Smith. This is what the NFL is all about, and it's getting more people into the game. It's actually like so cool for us that that's sort of happening, that we've got like friends getting into football that we've been pals with for a long time, and they're taking a real interest. And he's like trying to organise like date nights with me and him to watch the games. It's incredibly cute. I'm going to have a great time with him going forward. And we've got to be a bit positive here, Andrew, with some of the quarterbacks though over this weekend.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we say positive. People Byron, can we clear this up first? Because Byron put it in the group. Why are we hating on Justin Fields after one game?
We're not hating on him, Andrew. I just knew it would wind you up.
Okay, so we're just winding me up.
I was winding you up.
That I'll allow that.
Yeah, there's been some interesting games over the weekend. The Chargers-Chiefs game I've not watched, unfortunately, but a lot of hate out there for Justin Herbert. It felt like on Twitter today. Have I missed something here?
I think it's more the case. It's been like everyone always brings it up that he's great for fantasy, but he can't win games. He can't lead his team into winning positions. He can't. That we said before the season started. That's a stacked roster on both sides, and he can't lead his team to victory, despite being an absolute stat monster.
I am going to get something off my chest here because we talk about him a little bit, and I try not to talk about him too much, but I just want your two opinions on this, how much of the game you watched. But I watched the start, the first quarter, and then the next day I watched the 40-minute highlights of the Bengals-Steelers game, 37-30 to the Bengals. And for the Pickett naysayers out there, I watched this game and I really tried to concentrate on what Pickett was doing, Kenny was doing, because a lot of people are going already like Steelers could take a quarterback with the 8th pick or whatever we have, and do we have confidence in him and stuff like that? I'm going to put out my view of it all, of what I saw in this Bengals game, because I thought with TJ Watt coming back, this Bengals team could be ours to take, because it's not been a good O-line, and our defense is really good on that front line, especially when TJ Watt is playing. However, what I said at the start of the year, the secondary's weak. That's how we'll get beaten, is how we got beaten, which is exactly right. But it was more the offense I was looking at because of Kenny Pickett. He cannot be judged on this year alone of how he'll be going forward. And there's a lot of players on that team that I think is the same thing as well. Najee Harris is getting a lot of hate at the minute because Jalen Warren, every time he comes on, seems to have an explosion of yards, which is good. But this O-line is not helping Harris. Najee Harris isn't doing enough, and the O-line isn't helping him enough to make them yards either. I mean, Pickett is making throws. I think he's missing throws. I don't think he's exactly tuned up with the wide receivers just yet. Got to remember, one of his wide receivers is a rookie as well in George Pickens, who has made some good plays. I think Claypool going missing, okay, is a weapon less, but Claypool for me in the last few months really has just been a go down long, try and get the flag every time. And he's doing that in Chicago as well, it feels like. Johnson is a case of a great game, bad game, great game, bad game. No consistency there at all. Pat Frymouth, every time he gets the ball in his hands, makes plays. He just gets the ball in his hands at the wrong times because he's also the safety valve for Kenny Pickett. But he cannot be judged on this year alone. The O-line is not giving him enough. The running game is weak. We can't do anything on first down. And it's getting too much pressure on first down. If we're getting 3 yards, it's not like we're getting we're not breaking it away and getting the next first down. We struggle to make first downs, and it gets to third. We get to 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 7, and the pressure is on Pickett to make them plays every time, and it's just not working for the Steelers. Now, I'm saying it's not working. I feel like it's building. That's why I think there is some building element to this. And I think it will be Tomlin's. Well, it's definitely going to be Tomlin's first losing season with us. Not that I'm out on Tomlin either. I just think Pickett. We've got to play the patient game with him. I think he's one of the quarterbacks this year where I'm like, you cannot judge him on this year because there is so much going wrong and he's getting so much pressure because of that. Because the O-line's weak and he's not helped in the run game and his receivers are not helping him out either. Discuss.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, we're back at school.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think you can ever write off a rookie off of 1 year unless they come out and they're just absolutely horrendous and horrible, which he hasn't been. He's just looked like a rookie. But I think 18 months, the transition from college to the NFL is not as difficult as it used to be. There's a lot more better play and competitive play in college now. So I think you're not sitting on someone for years. You're putting them in. I think 18 months for me is what you've got to give a rookie to see what they can do. And Kenny Pickett is definitely, for me, one of those guys that you go, look, there's something to work with here. There is things you like about him. Let's see what he can do when we build around him, because I've always said you've got some absolutely amazing pieces that are all really, really young. So to him to grow with them is fantastic. I think you picked the wrong quarterback in the wrong year. I think you went for the story rather than what was best for the team. But you've got to stick by that now because that's who you picked and you're not going to go through it again. There's no point in like abandoning ship now and doing the same again next year. Give him 18 months with a good backup. You should be fine. I think Najee's playing with that foot injury, and I think he's only started to recover the last 2 weeks. I think you've seen more out of him. I think that's because he's getting over that foot injury that he had, and he should have rested when he had it earlier in the year. And it is just your O-line, isn't it? Because like we said, all of those receiving pieces, young and talented, that whole defense, especially when you've got Watt, unstoppable, needs a couple of more in the secondary in rotation. You just haven't got depth there for me. So yeah, why not? You might be stuck in a bit of a Daniel Jones situation where you like Pickett. He's not overly doing masses of things wrong, but he's not the guy. And you might be having that conversation at the end of his rookie contract, because I think that's what you've got with him. So it's just whether he can progress. And I'm giving him, like I say, I'm giving him 18 months to really prove when I want to make my decision of whether he's good or not. So for me, I'm not going to judge him now. So neither should your franchise.
Yeah, to be honest, there's not much more else I can say because he's pretty much nailed it. You've got to give him time to acclimatise. It's a new environment. He's learning a new playbook. He's learning how to play with a new team. There really isn't much more to touch on, to be honest. It's pretty much said exactly what I wanted to say. 18 months, you've got to give him their first year. You have to. You don't expect to throw anyone into a situation with that pressure. A franchise who's been good for the last sort of 10 years. They've lost their veteran quarterback that they've had for a long time. You can't expect him to go in and be a superstar straight away. You shouldn't do that with any rookie, to be honest. There's nothing more I can say on that, really.
Sorry, Byron.
Yeah, it's all right.
There will be a change-up of the schedule this week over the Franchise Tag podcast. The fantasy show will be on tomorrow night because Thursday is Thanksgiving and we have 3 really great games coming to you. Starting at 5:30 our time, it is the Buffalo Bills going to the Detroit Lions. Well, back to Detroit, I suppose. Already been there once this season. The 9:30 kickoff is the New York Giants against the Dallas Cowboys, and then the 1:20 game going from Thursday to Friday morning is the New England Patriots going to the Minnesota Vikings. A Bills fan in Byron and a Giants fan in Andrew. Quickly, Byron, are you feeling confident about going back to Detroit and getting the win here?
Yeah, I am. I think Allen has been horrendous the last 3 games, but when you have an injury to your throwing arm, there's not much he can do, really, is there? Let's be honest. It's affecting his head. I think he's going to come back. I think he's going to sort of go back to how we saw him at the start of the season. I'm not worried about him at all. I do think we need someone who's open underneath. I think we had it with Cole Beasley, if only he wasn't so controversial. I do think we need that slot guy, and it's just not been utilised as much this season. The Lions are playing well, but as you've seen this season, our run defence, Chubb had 19 yards off 14 carries. When's that ever happened? We held Derrick Henry in check as well. I think the Lions' run game will be a problem because they do have good running backs in Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift, but I think we'll come away with a victory. I do.
Just on that, Byron, just in hindsight, do you think that when you've got a player as good as Allen and he is literally your whole team, and if he is out, then you're back to the drawing board? Do you think you should have rested him and brought Keenum in and let him rest that shoulder? Because it has obviously plagued him for longer than the week's rest that he had.
Yeah, I think maybe we should have against the Vikings, as it wasn't a conference game. But I think we definitely should have brought him in last week. Because obviously he got it in the Jets. I think we should have rested him against the Vikings because it wasn't a conference game. We lost anyway. I don't want to talk about how we lost. That's that. Thank you. But yeah, I don't know whether it hindered him. We're not medical professionals. If they say it's not going to do any more damage, then it's not going to do any more damage. It might. I think it might have just been his head, trying to be a bit too cautious with it. But I always have trusted him. Why wouldn't I? I've seen how he's played over the last 2 years. If he and medical professionals say he's good to go, then you let him crack on. He's good to go.
Sportsmen that are at the top of their game are never going to say, I'm not good to go, are they? They're always going to be like, yeah, put me in, I can win this. They're going to put the team on the back.
This is the 6'5" quarterback who trucks linebackers as well. There's no way he's saying I'm not ready to go.
It's never in doubt that even if he missed one game, you're probably still going to qualify for the playoffs and have a run. I wouldn't want my beast of a quarterback having any hindering going into the playoffs. So just one to think about, really.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about your Giants against the Cowboys, Andrew? Because it's a tough game. That will be. I think it'll be a really interesting game. Actually, that's probably going to be the game of the day for me.
You know what? Everything goes out the window with form, with players, with ability. Who's the best player? Who's got the best record coming in? Who's got the momentum? When it's Giants Cowboys, it's going to be a good game, and anyone can win it. I think Giants losing to the Lions, we always knew that there was going to be a loss eventually. And it's probably come at a good time for us to now bounce back and go, we need to, climb down slightly off of the hype of how well we've done, go into the game against the Cowboys with a bit more to prove. And it's going to be an excellent game because the Cowboys, I've had question marks over them, but equally every time they go into a game that they need to prove themselves, they come out at the other end of it absolutely amazing. So it's going to be tough. Someone's got to play well to win this. But like I said, it's divisional rivalry, massive rivalry. So anyone wins that on the day, it'll be a great game.
It's going to be a really good week of sport. 3 games on Thanksgiving. You stay up late on Friday, you then wake up Friday, and then wheel round to 7 o'clock. England v the USA in the World Cup. What a few days are forward. Then we've got more NFL of the weekend, more World Cup. Yeah. Currently, Australia are beating France 1-0. So there could be an upset on the cards for France. But World Cup fever has hit the UK for anyone who is watching from all around the world. And obviously our great result against Iran. Long may it continue our good form. But until then, make sure you check out the Franchise Tag podcast. Like I said, the fantasy show is going to be on tomorrow night now instead of Thursday or Friday like it usually is, because we want to get the fantasy stuff for the Thanksgiving games. So that should be good fun. And of course, our Sunday preview show coming up on the Sunday as well. Go and check that out. Until then, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Byron. And we'll see you all next week.